afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this week's bi-weekly episode of the CGIS Brief, where we're going to do a deep dive into a topic related to studying abroad. So grab a cup of coffee and take a break with us. My name is Ashton, and I am an Intercultural Programs Advisor in CGIS, and my preferred pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am joined by my two co-hosts today, Callie and Stephen.
Hi, I am Callie Rouse. I am the International Health and Safety Assistant at CGIS, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
And I'm Stephen Gonzalez, the Communication Specialist at CGIS, and my preferred pronouns are he, him, his.
So you may be wondering, what is a CGIS Brief? And it's a new initiative that we have started, and we'll pick a new topic every other week. And we're really excited about this because they're the topics that we don't often get to in like pre-departure orientation or advising sessions, and they're going to vary. So they could be like working out abroad, drinking and nightlife, or scams and fraud abroad. We're also featuring scholarships. So a lot of really fun, lighthearted topics. And we really want this to be a conversation between us and you, the student, and a lot of what we talk about today is going to draw upon our personal experiences. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. We may do some polls throughout. And that brings us to our topic today, which is working out abroad. So whether you run every day or you do yoga, this webinar is for you. So pay attention. We've got some really great tips on how to prepare for exercising abroad.
So I personally had a lot of fun researching this topic. There's so much that I wanted to cover, but Callie and Ashton told me I couldn't take 20 minutes. So I've done my best to try to, to chop it down a little bit. So I'm going to go over just some fun facts. And then in a little bit, I'll be able to kind of expand on some workout norms in a few countries and regions. So for now, let's just go over these fun facts together. So number one, in the US, people love to walk. I join some of the other countries around the world in thinking that Americans are much more lazier than that. I really had no idea that walking was so popular. But according to the according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it is by far the most popular method of exercise in the United States. Number two, parkour is huge in France. I think for me, I just learned about parkour maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. So I thought it was fairly new, but I just recently discovered that it originates in France in the 90s. So it's been around for a while. So if you know anybody on campus who does parkour, make sure you tell them that there's a place for them in France. Number three, in 2018, Uganda was considered the world's fittest country. Only 5.5% of Ugandans have an insufficient level of activity. This fact in particular is one of those things where I think researching your host country is vital, because if I would have just seen these two sentences, I would have thought like, oh my God, like what's wrong with me that I can't like be that fit? But this, I actually was able to learn that I guess when I see fittest or the word fit, I think that that's something by choice, that you're actively participating in physical fitness. But in a statistic like this, it's actually more focused on circumstance. So if you have a country like Uganda, where most of the population is low income, people are actually are subjected or forced to integrate a sufficient amount of physical activity in their lifestyles, unlike those in wealthier countries like us in the United States, where we have access to transportation systems. So I thought that was really interesting. I would never have thought of it from that perspective. And then the fourth fun fact is yoga reigns supreme. Now, I've always known that yoga was super popular, but I'd never really realized that it was more than 2 billion people around the world practicing yoga. That's a pretty powerful number. And then lastly, Americans and Australians are most likely to work out when traveling. Again, I was shocked to discover that Americans were so enthusiastic about working out. According to a survey conducted by Expedia, which surveyed more than 7,000 residents from 7 countries, 55% of Australians believe it is important to exercise while traveling, while Americans come in at a close second place at 53%. All right, so moving on to culture, workout culture. So I just picked a few countries and a region. For examples, we're going to start with China and how they're taking a more slower and more internal approach to working out. Tai Chi is very popular in China, but it's really not about getting toned or ripped. It's more focused on meditation and realigning yourself mentally. Surprisingly enough, in China, line dancing is becoming very popular in terms of working out. But what's actually getting increasingly popular is running. So within the last 5 years, they've noticed a trend in running. They went from having a couple of marathons to having dozens and dozens of marathons spread out throughout the country. So if you're a runner, that might be an option for you. I found this in my research that traditional school systems in China don't actually prioritize sports or fitness. So people usually just go for a walk after dinner or do basic stretches in the morning, which is typically when people are doing Tai Chi. But it's just a completely different mind frame when people think about physical education in China. Also, something to note, if you're used to going to gyms here in the US, gyms in China are very expensive because of low demand, but high expenses in equipment, which equals to expensive membership. I've gone down this whole Reddit tunnel about how expensive it can be, and the equipment isn't really what we'd be used to, like here in the United States. So perhaps taking a tour if possible. All right, moving on to Europe. Europe is definitely more outdoorsy, partly I think because Europe has invested, and a lot of other countries and regions too, have invested a lot of time and money into preserving their historical landmarks. So, anywhere you go in Europe, it just feels like every street that you go down is a walking tour. So I would be like super fit if I was living in Europe as an American, because I would just be so excited to see as much as I can. But all across Europe, you'll notice that everyone walks a lot and rides bikes. Biking is huge in Europe, but it's particularly huge in Sweden. So for example, they focus a lot on resistance training when it comes to physical fitness in Sweden. So you'll see a lot of cycling, a lot of bikes all over the place. And then I also found out that studies reported that not only 9% of Swedish people are not physically fit, or they don't work out regularly. And if you're anything like me, who worries about people judging you in the gym, I actually came across this really fun blog from a person who she was very concerned about being around so many statuesque people, right? So a lot of Swedes are like tall and like slender and like very physically fit, and she really was worried about not fitting in as much. But she found that going to gyms and running in the park, she actually got a lot more positive reinforcement from people. So keep in mind, the Swedes are not judgy people, apparently. Callie had actually, when we were first conceptualizing this whole idea of working out abroad, Callie had asked, like, how do Swedes function when there are longer nights, or if it's like really cold? So I did a little bit of digging around, and I found that the Swedes actually have a saying, which I'm going to play for you because I can't actually say this. So I'll play it twice.
Det finns inga dåliga väder, bara dåliga kläder.
Okay, one more time.
Det finns inga dåliga väder, bara dåliga kläder.
So that actually means there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes. So the Swedes are very serious. They take things very seriously, obviously, when it comes to working out. So just make sure you got some really good clothes to get you through the crazy winters. All right, lastly, we're going to talk about India. In India, working out is so abnormal that people will ask if you're okay or if you're dying. The younger generation seems to think that Indians have lost their way in terms of physical fitness. IndianTimes.com had this really interesting article about the journey of Indian fitness and how they feel their heritage in regards to physical fitness has been lost. At one point, India had shared so many different forms of exercise with the world during a time when Buddhism was being shared. So, for example, martial arts was said to have originated in southern India. It began to travel more farther east as Buddhism traveled east. And then it just never came back, or like the people who were teaching it never came back to India. And so now when we think about martial arts, we don't really think about it coming from India. So this concept of physical fitness has always really been embedded in Hinduism, where physical perfection is really imperative for full realization of oneself. So today, what we would know as holistic, being of like mind, body, sound, all those things, it has always been part of like ancient Indian culture. Last fun fact about India is that gym culture is rising fast, even though it's considered to still be in its infancy stages. You may still be able to find a gym, but one thing I do want to point out, and this is really where doing your research matters, just because you don't want to have to face these cultural shifts. Like, for example, in India, you may come across a gym that may ask you they may have like a no shoe policy. So that may be weird to take your shoes off, especially like when we're used to wearing shoes in gyms here. However, you are expected to wear shoes when it comes to weightlifting, because as we know, or you may not know, not wearing shoes while lifting weights can have a long-term effect on your body. So just, dig around. Different countries have these like different attitudes or cultures around working out, but everyone's got the same goals. We all are really trying to, be physically fit. So you really just have to do that research. I can't tell you like how much easier it will be on you if you can just do a little bit of research prior to departure. You'll feel better prepared. If you can process these things prior to getting there, I think that'll also help you out mentally to feel confident about where you're going.
Okay, so now that we've talked about some fun facts and culture and things like that, why does it actually matter to our students, studying abroad, to care about working out abroad? So there are a couple of factors of why it's helpful to actually exercise abroad. One is that exercise reduces stress, anxiety, depression, things that are pretty likely to come up during, the experiencing of culture shock, of going through, like maybe missing home or missing, your home culture and things like that. And it can be really helpful to have something like exercise as a physical outlet to kind of like the mental stresses of adapting to a new culture. In addition, routine is wonderful to get when you are studying abroad. I think like I remember I realized like there was like a bit of like part of me that was like so excited that I had like very little routine when I was, abroad, and I could do whatever the heck I wanted. But like later on, I figured out, I was like, oh, like routines are kind of helpful. They kind of help modulate your day a little bit, and getting an exercise routine included in your day is helpful, especially if you have one here in the US. Suddenly dropping off and not doing anything at all may be not so great. However, don't put like undue pressure to do a lot. Like you don't have to be going to the gym formally, or like making sure you're getting like a certain set of days a week doing exercise. It's also important to notice that in a lot of locations you're probably going to be doing a ton of walking around, exploring new places, going to new cities and all sorts of things. Like you'll wear through your shoes. I wore shoes down to the very edge or the very bottom when I was in Vienna, which was a very, very unfortunate because it was raining and I only had one pair of shoes with me. And so I had to duct tape my shoes together. So that just shows like you walk a lot when you're studying abroad. But yeah, so make sure to
You only took one pair of shoes?
What?
You only took one pair of shoes?
When I was visiting Vienna.
Oh,
I was based in Prague. I didn't bring one pair of shoes the entire time, but I was visiting Vienna with my mother, and there was a hole in my shoe.
oh.
So
Sure that the Europeans thought you looked really stylish with duct tape wrapped around your shoe.
it was a black, or it was a gray boot with gray duct tape. Woo! Gray stuff. It was horrible. Make sure you don't show holes before you go on trips, please. So yeah. Out. 1 second. There.
Thanks, Callie. So you may be wondering, when should I start thinking about establishing a routine abroad? And this will vary from student to student. For example, if you're a student athlete and working out every day or 5 days a week is a must, then you need to start thinking about this as you're researching programs. Like, is it a possibility to maintain a specific routine in X city? Or, you could be accepted to a program and be going abroad in 2 weeks, and you're just trying to figure out, where can I do yoga once or twice a week? So at any point, at any stage you're in, you can start thinking about these things. And the first step is to really identify, what do I do regularly? What do I, need to do to maintain a happy, healthy mind and body? So then you can ask yourself, is this exercise safe? For example, running outside may not be a great activity to do in the city you're going to, or you may have to find a very designated place, which Callie will talk about a little bit later. And then you can start researching your options. Like, there may be yoga studios, or there may be gyms in your neighborhood. And then some other good tips. I know Stephen has already mentioned travel blogs, which he's learned a lot of fun facts and information from. And those are always really helpful because a lot of times people who write blogs are very well traveled and they've been in these countries for a long time, as well as our past participants. They're always here to help. And then your advisor, obviously, you can start having these discussions with them. And then just some little tips. This is a photo of a student accommodation in Korea. So you can see there's a lot of empty floor space. So it may be that you are just going to do some workout routines in your own space, like yoga videos, or there's, now that we're in quarantine, we're home, a lot of us are working out at home. So you may want to pack some of those lightweight props that you already have, like 1 pound weights, or those thigh bands that are easy to move around. And I'm sure you can find a yoga mat anywhere you go, so you may not want to pack that because it takes up a lot of space. But just kind of think through what's going to work for you. Like Callie mentioned, and I think Stephen also mentioned, be prepared to walk for hours and hours every single day. I think we all have horror stories about shoes, about like bloody heels from them rubbing, not packing the proper shoes. So this is so important. I know when you travel to Europe or you go to a new city or Korea, you want to be really fashionable, but I promise you, you will have regrets. So please pack worn-in shoes and get used to walking here in the US. Like, spend 3 whole days without, riding in a car. Like, you can take a bus or ride a bike, but we've had faculty leaders who take groups of students abroad who have concerns about students because they can't keep up with how much walking that is required as part of the program. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to prepare for walking. And like Callie mentioned, don't be too hard on yourself. Walking certainly counts as exercise, and it's not something that we necessarily think about. And then pack Band-Aids. That's my tip for you. Pack big Band-Aids. So we have a lot of students who get involved with the local culture in really unique ways. So there are sports clubs similar to like intramurals here on campus. We had this student and featured in this photo who had a language partner, and then they ended up boxing together. So that was just a really cool connection the student wasn't intending to make. So have an open mind, like Stephen said. Also, when you fill out, if you stay with a host family, you have to fill out a questionnaire. Be really detailed. If you practice yoga 5 times a week, put that on there, because we've had students get matched with families who do those same activities, and they're able to practice their sport or their exercise as part of like a family activity, which is really nice. And then there are some other like little tips. The November Project is for runners if you're looking for a group to run with. There's also Airbnb experiences and national parks you can look into to go hiking or kayaking if you want to do something a little bit more outdoorsy. Actually, Cape Town in South Africa is really popular for hiking, and there's like 3 mountain peaks that are popular to hike, and it can be very rigorous. So that could be a goal of yours if you're traveling to Cape Town. Yeah, I think I talked about everything on this slide. So start looking into all the possibilities now.
Awesome. So health and safety, yay! So as Ashton mentioned before, I'll cover some of the same things, but with new things as well. So create a planned routine or route. Routines are good too, but routes are going to be helpful for you, especially when you first are going out in a city and you're not very familiar with it. It's really helpful to look at things like Map My Run or Strava, which is where other people will like share out their running routes or their biking routes. And this can help you give you ideas of where are good paths to go on, where is it safe to go, and things like that. Like where are you going to see like a collection of other people out and about, and where they consider good paths. Also recommend asking locals who live in your area, where are good places to go, and seeing what they are doing. You want to be mindful when going to a different country of the different climate or pollution levels you could be dealing with. So, maybe if you're in Southeast Asia, you might be running into really hot climates and really humid climates that you're not used to as somebody who lives in Michigan. I know I would not handle it very well. So, you want to maybe like moderate, like not run as much or run as far as you're used to in the US as you're adjusting to a different climate. Same thing, there are some countries and cities that are much more polluted than they are here in Michigan and the US in general. And so the pollution levels can impact you as well, especially if you have any other underlying health conditions that are related to, air. Run or bike during the day. So we recommend that you go out during the day, especially when you're going early on. I know when it's like, dead of winter in Sweden, then yeah, maybe you'll be out when it's technically night. Like there's no light out because the sun goes away so early, but especially early on, learning a route, learning how to get around, learning the flair and the kind of attitude of the certain neighborhood you're in, figure out, is this a safer neighborhood after dark? I don't know. Things like that is always a good idea to check out. And find a buddy. Buddies are great for inspiration to be able to go out and run and bike, and it's also just helpful for your safety to have somebody else with you. Other tips, avoid wearing headphones. I know if I'm going to be jogging, I want to be wearing headphones, but at least early on, make sure that you're familiar with what is going on around you. You want to kind of develop a sense of situational awareness of having an idea, is somebody following me? Am I in a really busy traffic area and I need to keep my wits about me? Things like that. It's really important that you really are fully aware of your situation when you're out and about. I would also avoid wearing flashy clothing or gear. So, things that are going to like really obviously delineate that you're a foreigner, being mindful of like, if you're flashing your Apple Watch or something like that, that these may be seen as like status symbols or indicate that you're not from there. That could lead you to be more susceptible of like getting like robbed or something like that on a more serious scale, or pickpocketed on a less serious scale. Travel light, so bring only what you really need with you. Like don't be bringing your full wallet with you. If you just need some change, so that if you need to get a little snack along the way, you can get it one. But do bring your like phone, especially a phone that's like connected to the local network that you can use to call locally. But only bring what you really need. Bring water. This is more of a consideration for places where you're not so sure of the local water. It's helpful in general, but if you are not sure if like there's safe water in the area you are, or maybe if there's going to be easily accessible water along your route, I recommend bringing it with you on the run. And also consider local location sharing, or just sharing plans in general of where you're going to be. This could be from using an app that like tracks where you are in real time, and, like somebody else has access to that and knows that you're going to be out. Or it could simply be like telling your roommate, like, hey, I'm going to go on a run. Like, if I'm not back in an hour, like, baby, be worried, and something like that. So somebody else knows, like if you don't return for hours and they're like, well, they were on a run, like they should have been back by now. It always helps to have somebody else kind of keeping an eye on you. And some helpful apps. So I did mention Map My Run and Strava for local running routes. Wikiloc is helpful for finding trails all around the world, for hiking, biking, and more, especially if you want to get out about, further into the countryside. What Three Words is awesome for if you ever think you're going to be in an area where you might get lost, like out on a hike or in the woods. It provides extremely precise 3 meter by 3 meter location information that you can share out. This is actually used in the US if like hikers get lost. If they like call it in, they may be asked to like provide what Three Words location are. It's also used by Mongolia and Costa Rica as place or like actual like formalized kind of ways to get around, especially with Mongolia. It doesn't have a proper like or normal postal code, so they use What Three Words as a way to delineate where you live. And AllTrails and Maps.me are also really helpful as well. So next time on the CJIS Brief.
So 2 Thursdays from now, October 8th at 3 p.m., we are going to go over tips and tricks of exploring programs. So this is really for students who don't know where to start in looking for a CJIS program that best fits their goals. So we'll kind of go through every stage, like what are, identifying your goals, how to use mCompass, and it will just make your life a lot easier if you know just a few of these details. We are also having the CJIS virtual fair that day, so you'll be able to talk to representatives from many of our programs, and they're really the experts. So please join us on that day.
Awesome. All right. Thank you guys for joining us and listening in today. This is our information, though of course we are fully virtual at the moment, but you can always reach out to us and ask us any questions if you'd like. All righty. Bye.
Bye.
See you next time.